Most feuds in rock music burn out fast. One bad interview, one sloppy quote, and a week later everybody moves on. But the strange rivalry between Neil Young and Lynyrd Skynyrd was never that kind of fire. It wasn't tabloid drama. It wasn't personal betrayal. It wasn't even real, at least not in the way people imagined it. It was something far more complicated.
In the beginning of 1970, got a taste for writing protest music and social commentary when he wrote the song Ohio after the Kent State shootings.
A cultural earthquake disguised as a catchy, feel-good hit song, a response record that turned into a misunderstood anthem and a joke that the entire country somehow took seriously for 50 straight years. And it all traces back to one line. Well, I hope Neil Young will remember, a Southern man don't need him around anyhow. A line that people still throw around like a grenade. A line meant as satire, delivered with a smirk, but interpreted by millions as a middle finger to Neil Young and everything he represented. But that's the twist. The song that Lynyrd Skynyrd wrote to mock Neil Young wasn't mocking him at all. In fact, it might be one of the biggest misunderstandings in American music history. To understand how this happened, we need to start where the spark first ignited, with Neil Young himself. In the early 1970s, Neil Young was the kind of artist who never bit his tongue. He wasn't born in the American South, he didn't grow up with its history, and he didn't tiptoe around uncomfortable topics. He was Canadian, blunt, deeply political, and unafraid to question America's darkest wounds.
With me and the corporations is, first of all, let me say, there are some great corporations, and there's some great leaders of corporations. But the vast majority of the ones that I'm talking about are controlling our politics. They're controlling the government. They pay for everybody's campaigns, and they write the laws. And the laws, by their lawyers, write the laws and hand them over to the legislators who might change a word or two here or there, but basically just go for it because these guys got elected with the money of these corporations.
In 1970, on his album After the Gold Rush, he released a song that would start at one of the most debated feuds in rock history, Southern Man. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't polite, it wasn't designed to make friends. Young sang about burning crosses, bullwhips cracking, white mansions, and the legacy of slavery. He demanded answers. He demanded accountability. He painted the South with broad, harsh strokes, not targeting individuals, but targeting the systems of racism that had shaped the region for centuries. And Southern audiences felt attacked. They didn't hear nuance. They didn't hear a political argument. They heard a Canadian rock star calling every Southerner a racist. But Neil Young wasn't done. 2 years later, in 1972, he doubled down with a second song, Alabama, another track about segregation, injustice, and America's racial contradictions. Another track that used the South as a metaphor for a much bigger national problem. And to many people below the Mason-Dixon line, it felt like a punch in the jaw. But for Ronnie Van Zant, frontman of Lynyrd Skynyrd, it was personal. Ronnie admired Neil Young. He wore Neil Young shirts on stage. He bought his records. He studied his writing. But admiration doesn't mean agreement. And when he heard Southern Man, he felt something break. Not anger, not really. More like frustration. Neil Young was right about the racism, but he was wrong about the people. Ronnie once said, "We thought Neil was shooting all the ducks in order to kill one or two." Meaning Young wasn't wrong about the problem, he was wrong about blaming everyone. So Lynyrd Skynyrd decided to respond, not with an angry rant, not with insults, but with a song that walked the line between pride, humor, and critique. That song became Sweet Home Alabama. And here's the crazy part. The entire Neil Young line, one of the most famous disses in rock history, was a joke, a smirk, a wink, a musical elbow in the ribs. Ronnie later admitted, "We wrote it as a joke. We laughed like hell." They weren't trying to hurt Neil Young. They were teasing him, like friends do. But America didn't get the joke. See, Sweet Home Alabama wasn't a simple Southern pride song. It wasn't a racist anthem. It wasn't a conservative rallying cry. It was a response to Nuance with even more nuance. The song actually criticizes segregationist Governor George Wallace with the boo boo booch, something most listeners missed entirely. It also calls out political corruption during Watergate. It acknowledges the South's flaws, but also pushes back against the stereotype that every Southerner is a cross-burning bigot. It was neither a defense nor a denial. It was a balancing act. The entire message of Sweet Home Alabama can be boiled down to yes, our history is ugly, but don't lump all of us into the same box. But when you give America a catchy hook, it will always choose simplicity over subtext. Suddenly, Sweet Home Alabama got hijacked by conservatives, by segregationists, by white supremacist groups who had absolutely no idea they were embracing a song that were mocking them, by people who thought they were owning Young by quoting the line, "A Southern man don't need him around anyhow," didn't realize they were completely misunderstanding the song. And the irony is almost poetic. The line meant to Neil Young was actually defending the same anti-racist ideals he fought. The people quoting it as a slam against were actually supporting his message. Ronnie Van Zant would have found that hilarious. And if you want proof this wasn't a real feud, look at the receipts. Ronnie Van Zant performed wearing Neil's shirts. He had multiple of them. He wore them proudly. He wore one on the Street Survivors, one of the band's most iconic albums. Meanwhile, Neil Young's Sweet Home Alabama. He told people that to their face. He performed it live. Yes, Young, the man supposedly dissed and covered song himself. Young even said the band nearly recorded his song Powder. Think about that. If there was real, why would Neil Young give Lynyrd Skynyrd unreleased songs to record? Because the feud wasn't real. Because artists respected the hell out of each other. Because this entire was a creation of fans, media, and people who never the nuance of either musician. And the mythology only grew more dramatic after tragedy. On October 1977, Lynyrd's plane crashed, killing Ronnie Van Zant and others. It shocked the rock world. It silenced a voice that had just begun to evolve. And almost immediately, rumors started. Neil Young was at Ronnie's funeral. Ronnie was wearing a Neil Young t-shirt. Neil flew to this to pay tribute. None of it was true. Not really. But the public needed the feud and moment of respect. Poetic. Something cinematic. Even if reality didn't cooperate. But what is true is this. Shortly after the crash, Neil Young performed Alabama live and changed the lyrics to Sweet Home Alabama in Ronnie's honor. No rivalry. No bitterness, just respect. Later, Young said, "Great band. Great." He was right. I didn't get personally at all. And decades later, still can't decide what song really means. Is it a song? Is it a Southern pride song? Is it a protest song? Is it a satire of Northern liberals? Is it a jab at Neil Young? Is it a love letter to the South? Is it a critique of the South? The answer is yes. It's all of it, and none of it. That's the duality of the Southern thing. A phrase coined by the drive-by who wrote an entire rock opera, the complexities, contradictions, and ironies of Lynyrd Skynyrd / Neil Young dynamic. And maybe that's why this feud fascinates people decades later. It wasn't just about music. It was about identity, about politics, about race, who gets to the story of America, what it means to belong to a region with a past and a proud culture. Young held up Lynyrd Skynyrd held up a second. And somewhere in the reflection, people wanted to see. For some, Sweet Home Alabama is a feel-good summer anthem. For others, it's a protest. For others, it's satire. For others, it's nostalgia. And for the who know the truth, it's a musical between two artists who admired other more than they disagreed. The final twist, the Skynyrd wrote to mock Neil Young, ended up immortalizing him. Without Neil Young's criticism, Sweet Home Alabama might never have existed. Skynyrd's response, Neil Young's message might not have reached the mainstream. They sharpened each other. They balanced each other. They needed each other. And in the middle, between burning crosses and the booing Wallace, between the Confederate flags and the Neil Young t-shirts, two sides of American culture that never understood each other, a strange, accidental harmony, even if it took the entire country 50 years to get the joke.